Coming this fall from SJS Direct in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. You can pre-order your copy of The Man Crisis today on Amazon.com. As I watched the sentencing of Bill Cosby, I came to realize that the whole concept of Jim Crow, which was established from the 1880s all the way to the 1970s, was a gynocentric concept. And I realized that it was a gynocentric concept as I began to take a more critical examination of this Me Too movement. Now, this Me Too movement is being led by a group of white feminists, and these white feminists say they are all about stopping sexual harassment and sexual assault, and in actuality, it's all about them trying to gain control over the United States of America and trying to find a way to make men second-class citizens in their own country. So Jim Crow was about making men second-class citizens by saying that in the cases of Dred Scott and Plessy versus Ferguson, they had no rights a white man needed to regard. And fast forward over a century later, we have the Me Too movement trying to lay the foundation where they can say they have men, regardless of race, have no rights any woman needs to regard. And that's why I say that Jim Crow was a gynocentric concept. And we can see that based on the reasoning of Jim Crow, because many of the unwritten laws of Jim Crow were all about protecting white women. It was always about a black man could not look at a white woman, a black man could not talk to a white woman, and that if he ever said or did anything that offended one of these white females, he would have to deal with the consequences of being terrorized by a group of these beta males known as the Ku Klux Klan, and that this group of beta males could go out of their way to lynch this black man, kill this black man, and under other rules of this Jim Crow, a black man could lose his job, and usually he wound up losing his job as related to either offending one of these beta white males who wanted to protect this white woman. So everything as related to Jim Crow really was about establishing gynocentrism as a standard in American society. So when I take a critical look at Jim Crow, its foundation is rooted and based in gynocentrism. And gynocentrism is all about elevating females to a higher position above males. And what these beta white males, who are supposed to be white supremacists, what they wanted to do was elevate this white female to a high position above themselves, and they wanted to protect this female at all costs. But what these beta males just didn't understand over the last 50 years as the feminist movement evolved is that the female who they elevated now sees them as lower than they are. And when it comes down to this female, she believes that she is so much better than these beta white males. This is why she has started this Me Too movement and said that it's about stopping sexual harassment and sexual assault. But in actuality, it's all about these women gaining power and control over a group of beta males who they believe are far beneath them and want to use this Me Too movement as a way to grab political power so that they can impose gynocentric Jim Crow on these white supremacists. Now, these white supremacists believe that by destroying the legacy of Bill Cosby, they have accomplished something. However, what has happened is that these females are using these beta males as a way to gain power for themselves. And what they want to do after they get their power is impose gynocentric Jim Crow on all men in America, and they use these white supremacists as pawns to gain that power. And that's what I came to realize after these feminists celebrated the victory over Bill Cosby's conviction and the sentencing of Bill Cosby. And as they started to shift from Bill Cosby over to Brett Kavanaugh. Now, with Brett Kavanaugh, what these gynocentrists want to do is solidify their power as imposing gynocentric Jim Crow as the law of the land. And unfortunately, many American men just can't connect dots to see what these feminists are up to. Because what these feminists want to do is impose that gynocentric Jim Crow on all men, make it where men have no rights any woman needs to regard, impose the standard of trust and believe as the standard of the law of the land, and then use the standard of trust and believe to go out here and terrorize men and have them arrested and jailed based on charges of mansplaining, manspreading, and try to make men fearful of women in the same way that black men were supposed to be afraid of women during the times of Jim Crow, where they had an enforcement unit known as the Ku Klux Klan. But what has happened now is that these feminists want to use a group of beta males in law enforcement to be able to enforce their policies. But what I believe is going to happen to many of these females is that they have bitten off more than they can chew, and their attempts to try to spread Jim Crow from black men to white men, what's going to happen is a lot of these men are going to realize that they have nothing to lose, because as long as they participate in the system, they have the risk and possibility of losing everything. Because the aftermath of the Bill Cosby sexual assault conviction is all of these men becoming red pilled, all of these men going MGTOW, and MGTOW philosophy further spreading all across the country. And as MGTOW philosophy continues to spread, we are starting to see companies no longer offering mentoring to women in workplaces or even hiring women in workplaces. And we're starting to see men starting to close their wallets, not go to bars and clubs, and men pulling their resources out of social interactions and the dating scene, where women get most of their economic needs met. So when I take a critical look at this whole concept of Jim Crow, I see that the power behind Jim Crow wasn't the white man, it was the white woman. And it all goes back to the African proverb that said a race can rise no higher than the moral position of its women, and as the woman goes, so goes the race. And the white female has gone from the woman who could take the American race to the next level to one who has made a compromise with the devil. And as she has joined up with this feminist movement and has tried to push this campaign of gynocentric Jim Crow, what we're seeing with this American white woman who has gone completely amok is that she has lost all of her control over herself and her attempt to gain control over the country. And with this Me Too movement, we may be seeing this female biting off more than she can chew in this situation, because in her attempt to put Jim Crow on her own man, what she doesn't understand is she is placing her man in a situation where he has absolutely nothing to lose. And there is nothing more dangerous than a man with nothing to lose, because if a man has to worry about allegations from a woman that says trust and believe, that's not a man who's going to go out of his way to protect a female in any situation. Because if that man even goes near that female, then what happens is he literally is going to put not only his free safety at risk, is going to be putting his freedom at risk. And when you put men in a situation where they are putting intangibles like their health, safety, and freedom at risk just for being in the same spaces as a woman, that does not give that man any sort of incentive to go out here and support women, protect women, and stand by women. Instead, what those men are going to do is what many of these beta males in the black community did when a black woman was punched in the face by a Chinese store owner in Oklahoma outside of one of these beauty supply stores. Because I remember watching that video of that Asian man punching that woman in the face outside of that beauty supply store. And at the time, I didn't think much of it, but I began to take a more critical look at it and see that was going to be the future for women in America if they continue to press with this Me Too movement. Because those men, realizing that they had too much to lose to go out here to protect that woman from a man who had nothing to lose, would not have any reason to go out here and try to defend her from whatever was going on. So those women are going to be out on their own, just like that black woman. And once that black woman, once this white woman, like this black woman, realizes that she's out on her own, it's not going to be a pretty place for most of these American white females and other non-black white females, because they are going to be in a position where they're going to have to deal with men who are dangerous, and there's nobody there to protect them because they said that they were strong and independent, they did not need a man, and that they could do everything all by themselves. And with these women being able to so-called do everything all by themselves, they're going to be at the mercy of people like that Asian store owner. And with this man realizing that he is bigger and stronger and has most physical power, and that law enforcement isn't going to do anything to him, what he's going to do is use the leverage he has in the situation to do things like have that 50% off sale and dictate the terms to these women. And just like those black women wound up submitting to his terms to go to buy that hair weave in his store, we're going to see many of these so-called feminists winding up submitting to whatever foreign male entity who decides to express and flex his physical power on these women. And that's not going to be a pretty picture that these American women are going to want to look at, because instead of them having to deal with the white male patriarchy, they may have to deal with the Muslim patriarchy, which is not going to be a joke when you realize the big picture of it, or these other patriarchies like this Asian Chinese store owner who flexed his muscles and let the woman know who has the authority because they are bigger and stronger. And that's where the Me Too movement is taking American women. But because American women believe they have all this leverage, they believe they have the upper hand in this situation. Again, not understanding they have overplayed their hand in this situation as related to this Me Too movement, and they're headed down a road they really don't want to go. Because if you alienate the men in your society, they have no reason to protect you, they have no reason to support you, and you're going to be all alone, just like this black woman was out in Oklahoma when she got punched in the face by that Asian store owner. And that's not a place I think most Americans want to be, because when they say Me Too, they don't know what they're saying Me Too to, or what the consequences of supporting this movement in imposing Jim Crow on all men will have on women for this generation and the next generation. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. If you want to try some of my men's issues books, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.